Welcome to Restitutio, where we dig beneath the layers of tradition to discover and live out authentic Christianity. I'm Sean Finnegan, your host, and today I've got a fascinating interview for you with Becket Cook. Now, some of you may recognize his name from the interview I did with him 2 years ago, interview number 18. In that episode, Cook shared his amazing testimony of how he went from a committed gay production set designer in Hollywood to experiencing God in a church service so deeply that it completely changed his life forever. Here's a description that he wrote of that moment. Quote, "All of a sudden, a giant wave of God's presence came crashing over me. A flood of intense warmth, emotion, and power coursed through me. I didn't understand it at the time, but now I believe it was the Holy Spirit. I had no prior experience with this, no framework for it, and no way of anticipating it. God revealed himself to me. In that moment, everything became clear. God was real, Jesus was real, the Bible was real, the resurrection was real, heaven was real, hell was real. It was all real. It felt like gallons of love were being poured into me. After my stunning encounters with God, I knew I could no longer pursue romantic relationships with men. Put plainly, I accepted that it was a sin." End quote. Actually, that was a mashup of quotes from his new book called A Change of Affection, and it goes way more into detail than our earlier interview. It's an engaging, relatively short read, less than 200 pages, all telling Cook's history and conversion and how he thinks about same-sex attraction now. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what the church needs. It needs people who are going to rise up and say, Christ is more satisfying. Sex is not salvation, whether heterosexual, homosexual, it is found in Christ alone. And that's exactly Cook's message. And what's so cool about Becket Cook's story is that it all happened 10 years ago. He's not some fly-by-night testimony today and fall away tomorrow kind of person. He's already stood the test of time. He's gone to seminary at Talbot, and he understands the Christian worldview, and he has a seminary-level understanding of the Bible. In this interview, I ask him about the book, how it's been received, and about his future. And I think especially for those of you who heard the interview before, you'll enjoy this follow-up. Here now is episode 292, A Change of Affection with Becket Cook. Well, Becket Cook, welcome to Restitutio. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
So to start out, let's talk about the book. It's called A Change of Affection, and I want to begin by asking, why did you decide to write a book?
Well, it really was kind of a God decision. I just felt like 4 years ago I started seminary, and before I started seminary, I just felt this kind of desire or kind of calling to write my story out. And so I just started writing the book. And I finished the first draft before seminary started. But then while I was in seminary for 4 years, it really completely changed a lot of the book and shaped so much of what I wrote about. So that was a very important aspect of writing the book. But the main goal of writing this book is really to help the church understand the issue of homosexuality from a biblically, theologically, culturally, and from someone who's been on both sides of this issue.
Would you say then the main audience you had in mind when you were writing it was a Christian who's maybe unsure about this issue in light of all the cultural pressure to be open and affirming towards the LGBT community?
Yes, I mean, it's not just the Christian who is unsure, but just all Christians who, even the ones who have convictions about, have the orthodox historical understanding of this issue and hold to those convictions. It's a book for every Christian, because it's for the ones who already have these convictions. It's helpful. I think it would be helpful to them to understand this issue in a more kind of nuanced, fully orbed way, and also to just help them, kind of like settle into their convictions even more. Just like, oh, okay, yeah, like this makes sense. And I'm not crazy to have these convictions, but it's, as you said, it's also for the Christian who is starting to waver on this issue, and even the Christians who have completely come to the conclusion that homosexuality is no longer a sin. It's for them to really just kind of understand this issue and the blind spots that we don't see, because there's so many blind spots. I mean, the culture is so powerful right now, and a lot of us, we're not understanding how influential the culture is and what a blind spot that is, and so we just have to recognize that and realize, the culture doesn't change the Word of God, regardless of what the culture is saying. It doesn't change the Word of God.
Yeah. You bring this up in the book. I was just taking a look at this a little bit. If you say on page 165, if you believe that homosexuality is a sin, you are immediately labeled a bigot or homophobic. It's not even okay anymore to just agree to disagree. How did this happen? How did the hostility become so fiery? Somewhere in the last decade, I disagree with you came to mean I hate you. And that really summarizes well where we're at, because as Christians, we do have a different worldview, but I fear that so many of us are not able to really decipher or distinguish between the Christian worldview and just sort of like the default postmodernism that's like in the air we're all breathing. So it's definitely an issue, this one in particular, that is on the forefront of people's minds up here in upstate New York, where I live. Just like right off the bat, how could I possibly even consider associating with a Christian or becoming a Christian or going to a church service or whatever, because you guys, you hate gay people. And it's like, what are you talking about? But that's really where people are coming from.
And as I talk about this in the book, I felt the same way when I was living as a gay man for my entire adult life. I felt like Christians were the enemy. Not, it wasn't like an everyday thought I had in my mind, but I mean, in general, I thought Christians believe who I am, quote unquote, is wrong. And so therefore they're the enemy. And I didn't want anything to do with them. But what was interesting is after my conversion from atheism to Christianity on that amazing day on September 20th, 2009, I realized the Christians in my church and the Christians I got to know were just some of the most amazing, loving people I've ever met in my life. And that's what I didn't know about Christians is I thought they were the enemy. I didn't know any Christians except my family members, but what I didn't realize is regardless of if you're become a Christian or not, these people were so loving and so generous with their time and their love to people, and people who in the LGBTQ community, they were super loving to them. And so that was my misunderstanding about Christians for all those years. And now I understand that no, Christians, I mean, yes, there are some Christians who aren't as loving as they can be, but
yes, there are.
But I've found that it's more often than not, Christians are super loving, and it's just and it's just this disconnect because when you're gay, it's like that's your identity and that's who you think you are, and so. And when anyone or anything threatens that identity, you immediately think of that person or that thing as the enemy. So that's why it's so difficult to reconcile the two things.
Yeah, and it's a personal attack. It's not just an attack on an abstract idea or viewpoint that you have. You feel like you are personally being attacked because it's your identity.
Exactly. Yeah, and as I said, I say in my book, my family loved me for all those years. They were super loving towards me, but at the same time, I knew, because they were Christians, I knew that they believed homosexuality was a sin. And so I always felt this kind of alienation from them, even though they weren't aware of it. But I felt alienated from them because I felt like they just didn't get me. They weren't on the same page with me. And so I understand that. I understand that feeling, of just not being able to connect with Christians if you are living that life.
Yeah. Now, was it difficult for you to find a publisher for this book, considering the culture right now?
No, actually it wasn't. It was interesting because as soon as I graduated from Talbot School of Theology, my seminary at Biola University, God is amazing because God called me to seminary. I felt a really strong calling to go. I went, and then like the day after I graduated, I got a book agent, and then I got a book deal like a month, 2 weeks later, and or a month later, and so it all happened very fast, and I actually got 2 offers from publishers, and I ended up going with Thomas Nelson, but it was amazing how God did that, and I wasn't really surprised, but I was just surprised at how fast it went.
Yeah. Well, you've got an incredible testimony. I mean, any publisher that wouldn't jump on that, I think, is just crazy. But I'm delighted to see that there wasn't enough resistance, I guess, among just like booksellers or Amazon. You mentioned like Amazon. There might be some resistance there. Could you talk about that a little bit?
I just there's a group of people who, one of the main persons used to go to my church, and he has a big following on social media, and he is now living as a gay man, and before the book came out was posting a lot on social media saying get this book banned on Amazon, and all of his followers were like, yeah, how do we do that? How do we get it banned? And I was just like, what is going on? I mean, thankfully, Amazon hasn't banned it, which I hope they don't do. But so, yeah, it's just there's been a little bit of kind of backlash from the book coming out with some people.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I found so intriguing about the book, on the back, actually, the endorsements. It's funny, the first 2 are from these respected evangelical academics. You have D.A. Carson and J.P. Moreland, pretty much household names for any evangelical. And then the last 2 are those folks who write about and help Christian folks with same-sex attraction. That's Caleb Kaltenbach, who grew up with gay parents, and Sam Alberry, who does a lot of work out of the UK. And then in the middle, you've got this random celebrity, Stephen Baldwin. And, I just love the back of this book because it's like a little window into your life. You've got the academics, the friend of celebrities, then you're the gay Christian activist. And so, talk a little bit about those who maybe don't know that much about your background, why this is the collection of people that are endorsing
I love that you say a random celebrity, Stephen Baldwin. I don't think he would enjoy that. But yeah, I mean, I just got different people from, all kind of parts of my life. J.P. Moreland was a professor of mine at Talbot. D.A. Carson I had met, and he read the book and endorsed it, which was amazing. And then Sam Albury is a friend, and he endorsed it, which was great. And Caleb is a friend too, Caleb Kaltenbach. But yeah, and Stephen Baldwin is a very, very close friend of mine. I met him at my church. He lives in New York, but when he's in LA, he and his wife come to my church, Reality LA. And we met, I guess, 3 years ago now, maybe 2.5 years ago, and we just became super close overnight. We immediately went out to dinner that night, and he's become a very close friend and a very big supporter of the book. And so he loves the message of this book, and he wants to, try to promote it as much as he can.
Yeah, cool. And then you've got Francis Chan here.
Francis wrote the foreword, which was very sweet.
How did that happen? Did you meet him at church, or what was that?
Yeah, I met Francis. It was my first semester of seminary, I think 2014 or 2015. It may have been my second semester, I'm not sure. But I went and spoke at a church up in San Francisco, Reality San Francisco, which is our sister church. And Francis was there, Francis Chan, and we had dinner before I spoke. And then while I was getting mic'd on the stage about to speak, he came up to me and he just said, hey, I just, was talking to my wife on the way here, and his wife, Lisa, and we left a restaurant and then we went to the venue. And so he's like, on our way here from the restaurant, we were just talking and we want to support you in any way we can. And I was like, wow, okay. And Francis ended up helping pay for, seminary for all those years. And then he helped with the book. And when I asked him to write the foreword, he just said, of course. And he wrote it. And so it was very, very kind of him.
So he's really been investing in you for quite a while then.
Yeah. Since I met him, he's been very, very much part of my life.
Wow. That's so cool. Is he pretty intense in person?
Yeah, kind of.
Or is he? Does he ever relax, or is he always just is he always on fire? What do you
He's
think?
always high octane.
Yeah,
no,
that's the impression I got. I don't know.
He's an intense person, I think, in general. So yeah, he's pretty intense, but he's very lovely and funny, and he's great to hang out with. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Let me get to the order of the book. Why did you decide to front load your conversion story in the first 2 chapters rather than telling the whole thing chronologically?
That was my publisher's idea. Yeah, originally I had the first chapter is kind of me just meeting those people at a coffee shop and seeing them with Bibles on the table and then being invited to their church the next Sunday. And so I had all that as the first chapter. And then at the end of the first chapter, I basically say, I can't remember exactly, but what would happen in the next week or whatever would change my life forever. And then I went back to my childhood and kind of went through all the steps of what happened. And then the last chapter of the first part of my book was supposed to be the one about my conversion, to Christianity and what happened. But my publisher just thought it was a good idea to put that last conversion chapter right after the first chapter, just so the reader, because readers, the thing is, a lot of people, when they read books, they kind of just read the first couple chapters and then they kind of put them down. But so it was just to kind of grab the reader and get to the ending quickly and then go back to how all of my life led up to that moment.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting reading it that way because I was already familiar with your story from our previous conversation, which was 2 years ago, by the way.
Wow.
And
that was fast.
yeah, and then reading, I'm like, oh, okay, this is starting at the end, and then I was like, well, what's the rest of the book about? And then we go back to childhood. I'm like, oh, I get it. This is like you see the end of the movie, and then it's a flashback, and you start in the beginning and find out how did we get here.
Yeah, exactly.
Which works. It's cool. I just was curious why you had done that, but that
Blame
makes sense.
Thomas Nelson for that. My editor.
Publishers are realists. They know what people really do as opposed to what we think we do or what we wish we did.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they're probably right about that. Let's talk about coming out of the closet. In the book, you described how you shared your faith with your close friend, as a Christian, I should clarify that. You talk about how you shared your faith with your close friends pretty much right away, and then shortly after that, you would witness to folks on sets and tell them about Jesus. But even just a couple years ago, you were somewhat in the closet with your Christian, maybe not your Christianity, but your stance on homosexuality on social media. What led to your changing your mind on that? Because you are very much front and center right now on social media, everywhere, just online.
I know.
What led to that change?
Yeah, as you said, I was a set designer for many, many years. But I was very vocal on the set and very vocal personally with one-on-one with people. I would be very honest and I would tell them, I met Jesus and my life changed and I don't live as a gay man anymore. That's not who I am anymore. That's not my life. I live a celibate, single life. And I was very comfortable doing that kind of in person, one-on-one. But you're right. I didn't really post a lot about it on social media, although there was kind of some videos out there online about my story and over the years. So it was kind of I was halfway sort of in the closet about it and halfway out. But once the book came out, like the jig was up. It was like, okay, like it's all out in the open now that the book is out. So now it's not an issue anymore. Although what's interesting is my agency, I haven't really said this publicly, but my agency who represented me as a production designer, they just dropped me.
Oh, wow.
Which is, they had vague reasons why. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's because of the book. And the book came out, and because I worked with I worked with Katy Perry and with every movie star, every celebrity, every pop singer I've worked with, and I work with so many different people in Hollywood that it's like, it's kind of impossible to have a book like this out and continue to work with those people, because you suddenly become persona non grata on these sets. And so it was kind of a shock to me, but I kind of saw it coming, but it was also still a shock when I got an email from my agency saying, we think it's best to part professional ways. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Wow. How long were you with them?
10 years. I was with another agent 10 years before that. Yeah. So it was pretty bizarre.
Wow. Yeah.
When you follow Jesus, you have to count the costs, and that's part of it.
Yeah. In a sense, it's a real shame, because it would have been really great for you to, be able to continue on in that arena and, just be an authentic Christian. But the sad thing about our culture is that there really isn't tolerance for people who believe, for example, homosexuality is a sin, who hold to a traditional biblical ethic. It's just, all right, well, get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, our culture is all about self-expression and being authentic and who you are. But if who you are goes against the cultural narrative, they don't want to know about it. They don't want to hear about it, and they just shut you down. And that's what that's what happened to me. My particular brand of self-expression was not welcome in Hollywood.
Wow. So how have people received the book? Have you had any feedback yet?
Yeah, I've gotten tons of feedback, with the exception of the very kind of loud vocal haters, as I would call them. I've gotten such real, positive feedback from the book and from people, and just people. I've gotten tons of emails and Facebook messages and Instagram messages and all these messages. And the thing is, here's the thing about the book is, I've gotten so many emails from heterosexual people who have said to me, wow, this book has convicted me in so many ways, and not just on this issue of homosexuality, but just in general on what it means to be a Christian and what it looks like to live a Christian life, and counting the costs and all that. And so I've gotten so many emails about just, how it's really strengthened people's faith and strengthened their, convictions, and on just a multitude of things. And so that's been really cool to see, that it's affecting not just people around this issue, but just people in general with their faith and their walk with the Lord.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about your future. I mean, it seems, are you looking to get hired by another agency to continue with the set design, or are you going full-time into ministry at this point, or what does it look like?
It's a losing battle for me to try to continue to pursue set design, production design, because it's just not going to work. It's just like Stephen Baldwin, when he became a Christian, he became born again in 2001, and he was doing really well in Hollywood and did a bunch of, The Usual Suspects and a ton of movies and TV shows, and he was doing really well, and then he became a Christian, and suddenly he was no longer welcome in Hollywood. I mean, that's just like the norm. So I don't think that's something I'll be pursuing anymore. And I knew kind of this was all happening, because I feel like God is calling me now into more of a full-time ministry with this issue and with this subject and with the book, and so I'm speaking at a lot of churches and conferences, and hopefully I would love to speak at university campuses, even especially Christian universities, which are kind of all over the place with this issue. So that's where I think God is leading me, is to really full-time focus on this ministry.
Well, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you say universities, that's kind of a scary thought. Not because you wouldn't do well speaking, but because they are often so protested. Not so much the Christian ones, but if you go to a private school or state school, secular school, there's so many times where a speaker comes in and they're just heckled relentlessly. Have you given much thought to that?
Well, yeah. Yes, I definitely don't want, to have a security team with me, to go into a building in the back door or something. So yeah, I have thought about that, and I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when it happens, but I don't know how that's going to work out.
Yeah, there really are two different avenues here for you as I'm listening to you describe and sort of paint a picture of the future here. I mean, you've got the church itself, and the church, as you point out in the book, needs strengthening. Christianity is a religion of love. It's all about loving God and loving our neighbor as ourselves. And so people get kind of worked up and squeezed within the tension of, well, I'm supposed to love my neighbor as myself, and my neighbor is gay, and my neighbor is offended by me not affirming their lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do I do? And a lot of denominations, a lot of individuals really, just out of a desire to not cause offense and to make others happy, I think, which, these are innate desires in all of us, that they would then relax their view on this or that scripture that is pretty clear on the subject. And then you have the other side in the church, which is the folks that are homophobic and they're just absolutely inappropriate in their views, and that maybe they might be technically right in some ways, but their treatment is just absolutely unacceptable. So I think both sides of that within the church definitely need a Becket Cook to speak into that, and you can speak with such authority because you've lived it.
Right. Yeah, and it just reminds me of Jesus when he says, "If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you," and that's comforting to me to know that, and to just keep reminding myself of that, because as Christians we're aliens in this land. We're aliens, and we're like the Jews in Babylon. We're
Yep.
and we're this isn't our home, and so non-believers and people who don't understand us are going to hate us, and are going to. That's another reason, like, I wrote this book, is because I talk about that in the book too, and it's just like I want to kind of help Christians understand that this life is a vapor. It's so short, and that's what I really try to get across in the book is this life is over in a second, and eternity is a very long time.
Yes, it is.
And so we are going to be hated. We are going to be despised by people, just like Jesus was.
Yeah. It's kind of an irony that while being gay was less accepted, you were in that lifestyle, and now that the culture shifted, you switch sides.
I know. It's really
you're swimming upstream again.
I can't win either way. I know when I came out as gay in the 90s, it was like a scandal in the early 90s. I came out, and now I come out as a Christian who believes homosexuality is a sin, and it's a scandal.
Unbelievable.
Again. And it's like, what's going on?
Maybe God was preparing you in some way. I don't know. You talk about this dinner party at the end of the book too in Malibu, where you were sharing your faith, and you could see that people started to get like really hostile. Could you share that story a little bit?
Yeah. So my friend who goes to my church, he came out of the homosexual life too, and he was saved out of that. And his boss was this guy who lived in Malibu and had this like gigantic, $20-40 million house. I don't know, it was huge. And his boss was gay and not a believer, kind of a new age person. But he invited the two of us to come out to talk about our faith, which was kind of interesting. And so, of course, I said, yes, I would love to come talk about the gospel. That's all I like to talk about. And so we went out there, and, I wasn't really expecting this, but because I thought it was just going to be him and another person, but it was actually a whole group of his friends.
Uh-oh.
And so we walk in, and I'm like, oh gosh, there's like 10 people around this table. And he immediately opens up by saying, oh, these are my friends Becket and Andrew. And Becket, why don't you tell everyone your story? And I was like, whoa. I'm like, I haven't even had a bite of my salad yet.
Uh-huh.
And so I ended up talking about my story, and everyone there, no one there was a believer. I mean, they were all kind of like Malibu, very like new agey spiritual people. So I'm telling my story, and they're all kind of tracking with me a little bit. I'm talking about the gospel. I'm talking about like what happened to me. And then I get to the gay part,
Uh-huh.
and I tell them, and I now understand that that's not who I am, and that's not God's design for human sexuality, and blah blah blah. And I started explaining that, and then the room just shifted, like the whole mood of the room shifted,
Mm-hmm.
and they started to become really hostile to me. The tone of the room just got louder and louder, and at one point I just kind of like stopped everyone. I said, hey. I was like, listen, I did not drive to Malibu on a school night because I was in seminary at the time, and I had midterms like the next day. I was like, I drove an hour to Malibu tonight to share the gospel with you guys. I didn't drive out here to like win a debate on this issue. I literally came out here, and the only reason I'm here, is because I love you guys. That's it. And then suddenly they were like, oh. And then the whole tone of the room kind of calmed down, and they were very sweet after that. But I told them, I'm not here to convince you of this or to win this debate. I'm just here to tell you what happened to me, and I'm here to tell you the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ and how it can transform your life. But, and I'm literally only doing this out of love. That's all there's no other motivation for me to do this.
That's such a great story because it really gets at the heart of it. Because, there is going to be resistance when you bring up this subject. We can mix it with love. We can mix it by saying, hey, look, I'm not telling you this because I'm trying to ruin your life or tell you that you're evil or anything. I'm telling you this because I love you, because I care. That's a great example for us to consider for that.
Yeah.
Now, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, they can go to my website, which is becketcook.com. So it's BECKET, 1T, and then COOK.com. And there's a thing you can click on to email me.
Contact form.
Yeah.
You're looking to get into speaking more and coming to churches and colleges, universities. How can people support you financially? Do you have like a donate option on your website, or is that not set up yet?
I don't really have that on my website. I haven't really thought about that.
Okay.
That's a good point, Sean.
Well, that's
maybe I should start something like that.
Well, if you're not going to continue with the production set design, then you got to make a living, right? So,
right. Yeah.
I think there'd just be a lot of people out there who, would be interested in helping out. And, if enough people get behind you, they don't have to give huge amounts, but, just regular amounts. And this could be a really great sustained ministry. And, maybe there would be, other creative options, maybe another book or a movie or YouTube videos or who knows? Who knows what would happen?
Yeah. My end game or end goal kind of for the book really has been for a long time. I ultimately want to turn it into a movie because I'm such a visual person. I've been a set designer forever, and I've written many screenplays over the years. I've been in Hollywood for, 25 years. And so that's kind of like the ultimate dream. If God leads me in that way, I would love to turn this book into a movie it's almost like the Unplanned movie about the abortion debate. I think that movie was so powerful, and I just think that people don't read as much, as you know, and I think if this were in movie form, people would go see it, and so I would really love to get to that point where we can turn it into a movie.
That sounds like a winning idea to me. My only question would be, how do they do the whole, in the church and you have this visionary experience? How do you portray that?
I don't know. It'd have to be kind of like Terrence Malick sort of directing style. He did the like Tree of Life and those movies, where it's very kind of ethereal kind of moments. And I think it would have to be. Maybe I'll get Terrence Malick to direct it. Who knows?
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Anyhow, thank you so much for taking some time out to come on Restitutio today, Becket. I really appreciate it, and I really wish you the best with your book and subsequent ministry. And really, really love to see how you followed through. You got the book done, it's published, it's out, and we'll see what God does with it.
Yes, thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me on again. It's good to talk to you. And yeah, and if the book is A Change of Affection, that's the title, A Change of Affection, and just get it because it's a fun read. Sean, you probably could testify to this.
Yes,
it's a fun read. I'm a funny person. So anyway, I'm just kidding. But it's fun. It's a fun read, and it's a quick read. So, but thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Well, that concludes our interview. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to get in touch with Becket Cook, you can reach him on his website, becketcook.com, and you can get his book. You should get his book, really. It's that good. On Amazon or wherever you buy books, it's A Change of Affection, and it will encourage you. And I think I also saw it on Audible for the audiobook people out there. Also, I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of changes on the Restitutio podcast. First of all, I've got some new intro music. This is version 3. So far, I'm really liking it. I probably shouldn't change my intro music, but I don't know. I get so tired of the same old, don't you? So I changed it, and I hope you like it. Additionally, I decided to change my numbering system. I was keeping track of regular podcasts, and I had a separate list for interviews and another for off-script episodes. I'm doing away with all of that complicated counting, and I'm just going with a straight numbering system. This is now, starting with this episode, number 292, and we'll just go forward like this from here on out. It'll simplify things for me, and hopefully for you as well. All right, well, thanks for tuning in. Please share this episode on social media, and if you want to leave a comment, visit restitutio.org. It's like the word restitution, just take the N off, .org. And you can find episode 292, A Change of Affection with Becket Cook, and add your voice to the mix. See you next week, and remember, the truth has nothing to fear.